What if I told you that the man who gave us light spent most of his life in the dark? Not the dark of an unlit room, but the dark of the unknown. The terrifying, crushing dark of not knowing if the next great idea would be the one to ruin him. We all know the story. Thomas Edison, the wizard of Menlo Park, the man who invented the modern world. His name is synonymous with genius, with success. But what if that story is a lie? What if his true legacy isn't the light bulb, but the 1,000 failures that came before it? This is not a story about a genius. This is a story about a gambler, a man who stared into the abyss of financial ruin and public humiliation over and over again. And this is the story of his first and perhaps most devastating fall. The year is 1877. Thomas Edison is not just an inventor, he's a rock star. He has just unveiled the phonograph, a machine that can capture sound itself. The world is at his feet. Newspapers call him the wizard. He's young, he's brilliant, and he's convinced he can do anything. And in this dizzying haze of success, he makes a promise that would become an obsession. He announces to the world that he will solve one of the greatest scientific puzzles of the age. He will harness the night. He will create a safe, practical, and affordable electric light for every home. The gas companies laugh. The scientists are skeptical. But Edison is undeterred. He assembles a team of brilliant men, his muckers, and they pour every dollar, every ounce of their energy into Menlo Park. The lab glows at all hours, a beacon of impossible ambition. For months, it's a cycle of hope and despair. They try 1,000 different materials for the filament, the tiny thread inside the bulb that must glow white-hot without burning up. Platinum, iridium. They try paper. They try cork. They even try a hair from a colleague's beard. And one by one, they fail. They flicker for a few seconds, a brilliant, beautiful, heartbreaking light. And then, poof, darkness, ash, failure. The investors start to get nervous. The whispers begin. Has the wizard lost his touch? The pressure is a physical weight on Edison's shoulders. The entire world is watching, waiting for him to fall. But then, a breakthrough. It's October 1879. After over 1,000 failed attempts, they try a new material. A simple, charred piece of cotton thread. They carefully place it inside a glass bulb, pump out the air, and seal it. Edison connects the wires. The room holds its breath. He flips the switch, and it glows. It's not a flicker. It's not a flash. It's a steady, warm, persistent light. It glows for 1 hour, then 2, then 13, then 40. They had done it. The incandescent light bulb was born. On New Year's Eve, 1879, he unveiled it to the world, lighting up the entire Menlo Park complex. It was a spectacle of pure magic. The public was mesmerized. The doubters were silenced. Edison was, once again, a god. But this is where our real story begins, because inventing the bulb was only the first step, the easy step. You see, a single light bulb in a lab is a miracle. But 1,000 lights across a city, that's a business. And business was a monster Edison had not yet tamed. He needed to build an entire electrical ecosystem from scratch. Power stations, generators, miles and miles of underground wires. A network to rival the established, powerful gas lighting industry. He founded the Edison Electric Light Company and poured every single cent from his phonograph profits into this new, terrifying venture. He was all in. His first big target was a single square mile in the heart of New York City, the Wall Street district. If he could light this, he could light the world. The plan was audacious. A central power station on Pearl Street that would feed electricity to hundreds of buildings. But the problems were endless. How do you build a generator big enough? How do you safely run live wires under crowded cobblestone streets? How do you stop the entire system from overloading and burning down? They worked day and night, facing one engineering nightmare after another. The costs skyrocketed. The investors were panicking. The public, once adoring, was now growing impatient. "Where is our electric light?" they demanded. 2 years passed. 2 long, grueling, expensive years. The financial noose was tightening. Edison was on the verge of losing everything: his lab, his reputation, his future. Until finally, on September 4th, 1882, it was time. At 3 p.m., at the Pearl Street station, Edison himself gave the signal. The massive steam engines roared to life. The generators hummed. And in the offices of J.P. Morgan, the New York Times, and dozens of other buildings, lights switched on. It worked. The system held. New York City had its electric light. The newspapers declared it a triumph of human ingenuity. It seemed like Edison had done the impossible for the second time. He was the king of a new empire, an empire of light. But kings have a way of attracting rivals. And in the shadows, a new, more dangerous threat was gathering. A threat that wouldn't just challenge his business, but the very foundation of his technology. Because while Edison was building his direct current empire, a young, brilliant, and fiercely ambitious inventor was working on a different system, a better system, a system that could travel farther, more efficiently, a system called alternating current. And the man behind it? His name was Nikola Tesla, and he was coming for the king. The battle for the soul of the modern world was about to begin. And it would be a battle fought not with light, but with darkness, betrayal, and a war of currents that would threaten to destroy everything Edison had built. He was the king of light, the ruler of a new electrical empire. But a challenger has risen from the shadows, a man with a different vision for the future and a better technology. His name was Nikola Tesla, and his system, alternating current, threatened to destroy everything Thomas Edison had built. This is the story of the war that followed. A war not just of technology, but of pride. A war that would force Edison to launch the most desperate and morally questionable fight of his life. And in the ashes of that battle, he would make a choice that would change his legacy forever. When we left off, Edison's direct current empire was powering a square mile of New York City. It was a triumph, but it had a fatal flaw. Direct current was like a gentle river, powerful, but it could only flow so far. A few miles from the power station, the lights would dim and die. Tesla's alternating current, however, was like a wild, powerful ocean wave. It could be transformed, its voltage raised, and sent hurtling for hundreds of miles with barely any loss. Edison knew in his heart that this was a superior technology, but to admit that was to admit defeat, to surrender his crown. And so, he did not innovate. He attacked. He launched a campaign of pure fear. He called it the Word of Mouth Campaign. Today, we'd call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. He publicly demonstrated the dangers of AC by using a Tesla coil to electrocute stray animals: dogs, cats, calves. He wanted to brand alternating current with a single, terrifying word: death. His most horrifying act was to partner with an engineer named Harold Brown. Together, they publicly electrocuted a circus elephant named Topsy at Coney Island, using Tesla's alternating current. The newspapers called it a gruesome spectacle. It was all to prove a point. My rival's technology is a killer. But the darkest chapter was yet to come. Edison and Brown advised a state prison to use an AC generator for a new, more humane form of execution: the electric chair. The first man to be executed was William Kemmler. The process was botched. It was gruesome. And Edison immediately used the tragedy in his propaganda, calling electrocution being Westinghoused, after George Westinghouse, Tesla's business partner. He had stooped to the unthinkable. He had used death itself as a marketing tool. It didn't work. The world needed power to travel long distances. The future was demanding AC. In the end, even Edison's own company betrayed him. In 1892, his backers merged with their main rival and formed General Electric, a new giant built not on Edison's direct current, but on the Tesla Westinghouse system of alternating current. The new company dropped Edison's name. He was out, pushed from the very industry he had created. He was financially secure, but his spirit was broken. He told a colleague, "I'm going to do something now so different and so much bigger than anything I've ever done before. People will forget that my name ever was connected with anything electrical." And so, the Wizard of Menlo Park vanished into a new obsession, one that would consume a decade of his life and millions of his dollars: iron. He saw that the high-grade iron ore on the East Coast was running out, so he bought an entire mountain in New Jersey. He designed a colossal automated plant with massive rock-crushing rollers and powerful electromagnets to extract iron from low-grade ore. It was a monumental feat of engineering, but it was a nightmare. The massive rollers broke loose. Abrasive dust covered everything. Several workmen died in horrific machinery accidents. For years, Edison lived at the plant, tinkering, rebuilding, pouring his soul and his fortune into it. He sold his General Electric stock to keep it running, going deep into debt. And then, the final blow. Vast, high-grade iron deposits were discovered in the Mesabi Range near Lake Superior. Overnight, Edison's expensive, complex process was worthless. After 10 years and over $2 million, he had to shut it down. It was his most spectacular financial failure. But remember, Edison never saw failure as an end, only as data. He looked at the wreckage of his mining empire and saw one piece of technology that still worked perfectly: his giant rock-crushing rollers. And he saw a new industry booming all around him: cement. So he founded the Edison Portland Cement Company. He used his powerful crushers to pulverize rock for cement, and he revolutionized the kilns used to make it. He became one of the biggest cement producers in America. But even then, his ambition was too big. He decided to use cement to solve a housing shortage by creating entire poured concrete houses. He promised to mass produce them, one a day, for working-class families. It was a visionary idea, but it was too expensive, too radical. The world wasn't ready. The concrete houses were another flop. But of all his flops, there is one that is both bizarre and heartbreaking, the one that shows the limit of even his genius. After inventing the phonograph, he had an idea: a talking doll. He miniaturized his phonograph, placed it inside a 22-inch doll, and hired young women to recite nursery rhymes into recording machines in a factory. These were some of the world's first recording artists. The dolls were terrifying. They were heavy. The mechanisms broke easily. And the recordings, well, a newspaper at the time said they had a flat, uninflected whine that was hard to understand. The Washington Post wrote, "Dolls that talk, they would be more entertaining if you could understand what they say." They were also wildly expensive. In today's money, a dressed doll would cost nearly $600. The public rejected them. After just a few weeks on the market, Edison was forced to pull them. He called them his little monsters. He never understood the consumer market. He was a genius at technology, but he couldn't see the world through the eyes of a child or a parent. So, what are we to make of this man? The man who gave us light, but also gave us the electric chair? The man who failed in mining, in cement, and in toys? His legacy is not a simple list of successes. It is a landscape, carved by valleys of failure just as deep as the peaks of his triumphs. The automatic vote counter taught him to only invent what people wanted. The phonograph doll taught him that even perfect technology needs to be practical. The iron ore disaster taught him that no amount of genius can stop the tide of the market, but that the tools from one failure can build the foundation for the next venture. He never stopped. He never surrendered. He saw failure not as a verdict, but as a teacher. We remember Edison for the light bulb, but we should remember him for the 10,000 ways that didn't work. We should remember him for the mountain he mined into dust, and the little monsters that wouldn't talk, because his true invention wasn't the phonograph, or the bulb, or the motion picture. His true invention was a mindset, a relentless, stubborn, unwavering belief that there is no such thing as a dead end, only a new path, waiting to be discovered. His legacy is not just the light he gave the world, but the darkness he was willing to endure to find it. Thanks for watching.